now I'm not hearing Chair Anderson. Oh,
Amy, are we ready? If not, go ahead. I think we're ready.
great. All right. Well, welcome everyone. This is the November meeting for the Minnesota Historic Preservation Review Board. And I just have a couple housekeeping items before we jump into our agenda and get the meeting running. This relates with the fact that we are hosting this public open meeting virtually. And essentially, public bodies are still required to comply with the open meeting law during a state of emergency. In Min statute, section 13D.021 permits public bodies to hold meetings via telephone or other electronic means if the conditions of the section are met. And the following conditions, I'm just going to list those out that are to be met. One is that all participating members can hear one another, so that is really important. If someone is not able to hear, whether it's an attendee, person of the public, or a board member, if you could use the chat feature, that would be really appreciated, and we might have to take a pause, or we can figure out what is happening with the sound. Second condition is members of the public at the physical meeting location can hear all the discussion unless attendance at the regular meeting location is not feasible due to a health pandemic. Third is at least one member of the public body is present at the meeting location unless infeasible due to the health pandemic. And finally, that all the votes are taken by a roll call. And so we will also help facilitate that roll call voting when board member names are called. And just a couple additional notes for everyone as we move forward with tonight's meeting. It can be tricky when board members have questions or want to speak. Chair Anderson will try to cue those times up when there's opportunity for board members to ask questions, and also when there's opportunity for members of the public to respond to those questions or to present or comment on a particular item. If you can find your raise your hand feature, that's in the participants list. You could use that, and we have staff that are monitoring that. If you are unable to locate your hand feature, don't worry. Chair and staff will be kind of watching if people want to ask a question in the chat or simply just speak up as well. If you do raise your hand and your question is answered or you complete your comment, then it's important to remember to lower your hand. It doesn't do it automatically. So I just wanted to make that. This is also a new platform that we're using. Our first couple meetings we used Skype for business, and this is a new WebEx platform. So we're all getting a little bit used to where things are at, and so don't hesitate to ask a question of John in the chat if anyone is trying to find something or needs to know how to do something. And then finally, I just wanted to mention as well, for board members, if you do have comments written comments that you wanted to, instead of maybe going through them during the meeting, you can just mention that you maybe have specific edits or comments for National Register staff. If you could have those written comments sent to National Register staff for their specific item within the week in writing, that would be really, really great, very appreciated. So anyone else have questions? We do have a screen up. I realize that maybe some of you aren't able to see the presentation or the screen. The first slide, I will just quickly review that as well for those that maybe can't see it or are on the phone. The first bullet is for participants to please mute your microphones during the meeting, and please use the chat function to speak or answer a question if you are unable to unmute. Also, please use the Q&A or chat panel. So there's two different ways that you can ask questions or have a comment or raise your hand. The meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be available via our website after the meeting is complete. And then finally, be patient with us as this is our first meeting using this platform. And you can also reach out to John Disher He's got the control panel and is facilitating, administering this meeting. His phone number, if you need to reach him, is 603-661-9821 if you're having issues during the meeting. So again, welcome, and I will turn it over to Chair Anderson for introductions.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Amy, would you like to, should we do the roll call now for attendance?
Yes, that would be
Okay.
just fine.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, we'll do the roll call first, and then I'll read my ever-popular statement. I know everyone loves that. Favorite part of the meeting. And then we'll go back and have you introduce yourselves, okay? So I'm present. And Pam Brunfeld. John Decker.
Here.
Thank you. Lindsay Dyer.
Hey, present.
Elliot James. Philip Koski.
Present.
Thank you. Andrea Lavaster.
I'm here.
Thank you. Rob Mann.
Present.
Thanks, Rob. Steve Olson.
Present.
Chris Schulke.
Present.
Kate Salmonson.
Present.
John Stark.
Present.
Mary Warner.
Present.
Thank you. And Frank White.
Present.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, everybody. So again, everyone's favorite moment. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Minnesota State Historic Preservation Review Board for the National Register of Historic Places. My name is Kristen Anderson. I'm currently chair of the review board. The board's purpose this evening is to consider the nomination of properties to the National Register of Historic Places. As most of you know, the National Register is a federal list of those places deemed worthy of preservation. A nomination form has been completed for each of the properties that will be considered tonight. Each nomination form has been sent to the review board members, and each member has had an opportunity to study it prior to this meeting. The owners of nominated properties, local officials, and interested local groups have been notified of this meeting. All have been invited to send written comments about the nomination and to attend the meeting. Some of you may wish to speak this evening about a particular property. You're welcome to do so, and I encourage you to address yourself to the question of whether the property meets the criteria of significance for the National Register. These criteria are the standards against which the review board will evaluate the nominations. This evaluation is the board's only assignment. Criteria have been established by federal regulation. Copies of the criteria have been sent to owners of nominated properties and to the other parties I mentioned earlier. A description of the National Register program has also been sent to them. Each of the nominations will be presented by a staff member. Persons viewing the meeting remotely will then be given an opportunity to comment. These comments should be limited to 3 minutes. The State Historic Preservation Review Board will then discuss the nomination, and a vote by the board will follow. Should a nomination be determined this evening to meet the criteria for inclusion in the National Register, the nomination will be forwarded to the Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer, Amy Spong. Should she agree that the property meets the criteria and that the nomination is in proper form, she will sign the nomination and forward it to the National Register office in Washington, D.C., where it will be reviewed once more. The process is a lengthy one, but it is calculated to subject each property to rigorous evaluation. And before we begin evaluating properties, I would like the members of the State Historic Preservation Review Board to introduce themselves, briefly stating the role they fill on the review board and their particular expertise. So is our friend the alphabet one more time. I'm Kristen Anderson. I'm one of the architectural historians on the State Review Board. Pam.
Brunfeld, I'm a historian on the board.
Thanks, Pam. John Decker.
Hi, I'm John Decker. I'm a member at large, archivist, and historian.
Thanks, John. Lindsay.
Hello, Lindsay Dyer, member at large, design researcher, librarian,
Historian, archivist, public historian.
Thanks, Lindsay. Elliot, are you here yet? Not yet. Okay. Philip.
I'm Philip Koski. I serve the role of historical architect, and I am a practicing architect.
Thanks, Philip. Andrea.
Hi, I'm Andre Lavasser, and I'm a prehistoric archaeologist, and I am retired from the Chippewa National Forest, where I was the Heritage Program Manager.
Thanks, Andrea. Bob.
Hi, I am the historical archaeologist on the board, and I am an associate professor of anthropology at St. Cloud State University.
Thanks, Rob. Steve.
Hi, my name's Steve Olson. I am a member at large and a registered professional engineer, and we have at least one member of the Eden Prairie Heritage Preservation Commission in attendance tonight. So,
Thank you, Steve. Chris.
I'm Chris Schulke. I'm a member at large and a public historian with the Otter Tail County Historical Society.
Thanks, Chris. Kate, you're next.
I'm Kate Solomonson, and I'm an architectural historian.
Thank you, Kate. John Stark.
Hi, I'm John Stark. I'm a historical architect and a practicing architect.
Thank you, John. Mary.
I'm Mary Warner. I am a member at large. I'm the executive director of the Board of the Historical Society.
Thanks, Mary. And Frank.
I am a member at large and also a historian.
Thanks, Frank. And one more pass. Elliot, are you here yet? Okie doke. Our next job is to approve the minutes from our August 18th meeting. Are there any comments or corrections on the minutes? Anything about the August 18th minutes? Okay, are we ready for a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion that we approve the August 18th minutes.
That looks like Chris is speaking. And is there a second?
I will second it.
Okay. Oh, Steve. Steve. Okay. All those in favor? Oh, wait. I'll get this right by the end of the meeting. Okay. I vote yes. Pam? John Decker?
Yes.
Lindsay?
Yes.
Philip?
Aye.
Andrea?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Steve?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Kate?
Yes.
John Stark?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
And Frank?
Aye.
Okay, thanks very much for that. And now we're on to the presentations. And we're starting tonight with the Kushby Lodge in Lake County. And canoe guide, lodge keeper, and National Register historian Dennis Gardner is doing this presentation. Dennis, are you ready?
I'm just waiting to see the screen. John, have you got it set up?
Dennis can tell you from going from mute to not mute, my presentation screen disappeared. So I don't know quite if John can fix that for you, but I expect when I unmute myself, the presentation is going to appear. Puts you in a tough spot. But John Disher, is there a solution for that?
Yeah, Dennis, I did just pass you the presenter role. So down at the bottom of your screen, you should have your share content button available.
John, can you say that again? I'm sorry.
At the very bottom of your window, you should have the share content button available now.
Oh, okay, now I see it. Yep.
Okay.
I
John,
have a question. Pam,
Why does the state buy programs like this? I'm glad I got you to laugh. This is ridiculous.
It's a good point.
John Disher. I'm not seeing the PowerPoint. Which one is it?
That depends on which window you have open on your screen.
Okay, I have a choice between screen 1, start, Microsoft Outlook, Internet Explorer, photos, share file, other applications, new whiteboard.
You'll need to open the your presentation in PowerPoint first, and then it should give you the option to share it.
Okay. John, I'm sorry, but can you tell me where the presentation is?
Dennis, I'll go ahead and I'll start the presentation from here. If you just want to let me know when to advance the slides.
Okay. Yeah, why don't you go ahead and do that, John?
Okay.
Okay, John, I got it. It came up. Why don't you go ahead and advance the slides to Kushby Lodge? Okay, there we go. Okay, so we're going to talk about Kushby Lodge, and thank you for being patient with us on this. Like I said, this is kind of a, or like Amy was explaining, this is a new format for us, and we're still trying to get things down. But yeah, our first presentation tonight is Kushby Lodge. It's in Fall Lake Township, Lake County, and the author is Rolf T. Anderson. Can you go ahead and advance the slide? Kushby Lodge was established in 1924. It consists of 20 contributing resources and 9 non-contributing resources. The photo at left is the main building slash store at Kushby Lodge. The view is to the northwest, and the photo at right is a view across Lake One from the northwest shore. The view here is to the southeast. Okay, John. Kushby Lodge is located on Lake One, which is about 19 miles east of the range city of Ely and the Arrowhead region of northeastern Minnesota. It borders the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness. In fact, it is common for canoers to travel into the Boundary Waters from Kushby Lodge via Lake One. Okay, John. And here we just have a closer view of Kushby Lodge and Lake One. And you can see much of, or most of the resort is actually on the northeastern part of the lake. although it does kind of swing around to the southeast. Go ahead, John. Here's a site map of Kushby Lodge. Most of the cabins, again, are at the northeast part of the lake, but a handful are to the east and southeast of the lake. Okay. This is taken directly from the nomination. Quote, the construction of the resort in 1924 was associated with the growing interest in wilderness recreation that began to emerge in northern Minnesota in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. This trend was associated with both national and regional contexts in which recreational travel became available to a growing and increasing mobile middle class. Lakeside destinations became increasingly popular, particularly in the North Woods region of the Great Lakes, as travelers sought relief from the heat and congestion associated with urban areas. Our photo at the upper left is looking out from the dock onto Lake One. Our camera is facing south. Our photo at lower left is a view from Lake One towards the boathouse. Our camera is facing southwest. The photo at upper right shows the Kushby River inlet into Lake One, and the camera there is facing southeast. And our photo at the lower right is a view which we saw earlier across Lake One from the northwest shore. We are facing southeast. Okay, Jen. Kushby was designed to be rustic. Many of the cabins are made from logs, while others are wood of a different form. But the cabins were meant to complement the landscape, which is a primary component of the lodge. The landscape is wooded with many rocky outcroppings. The cabins were placed in locations to take advantage of the views offered by the landscape and Lake One. It is understandable why the landscape around Lake One was an accommodating area to establish a rustic lodge. The landscape is a primary reason for visiting. And the photo at upper left shows cabin number 7, and we are looking north. The photo at lower left is from Lake One towards cabins numbers 3 and 5. Here we are facing northwest. The photo in the center is cabin number 3. The view is to the northwest. And then the photo at lower right is cabin number 13. Our view is to the north. Do you notice that the exposed roots create a kind of stairway from the lake to the cabin? Okay, John. A good example of the siting of the cabins is cabin number 15, which sits on a rocky outcrop overlooking the lake. The top photo is cabin number 15. The top left photograph is cabin number 15, and the camera is facing northwest. The photo in the middle shows the truly rustic foundation of one corner of cabin number 15. Again, the view is to the northwest. And the photo at right is again number 15, and the view there is to the northwest as well. Okay, John. Here we have a view across Lake One from the porch of cabin number 13, and the view is to the south. All right. The transportation patterns around Kushby Lodge have not changed since its founding. Here are images of roadway and walkway paths around the resort. At the top left, we see a fork in the gravel road leading to cabins 13 through 19. We are facing northeast. At bottom left, we see the trail along the northeast shore with cabin 3 at the left. We are facing northeast. At the top right is the gravel road to the rear of cabins 5 and 6. Our view there is to the east. And at bottom right is the earth-packed road leading to cabin 7. Our view there is to the south. Okay. This is a travel brochure dating from 1926. It is for the Duluth and Iron Range Railroad. Before automobiles became commonplace, many would visit northeastern Minnesota via train, especially on the Duluth and Iron Range. Okay. And here we see Kushby Lodge brochures that date from the 1940s and 1950s. From the images and text, it was plain the purpose of a visit, namely, enjoy the rugged outdoors and all it has to offer adjacent to boundary water. Okay. Debate about how to use the area that would become the boundary waters had gone on for decades. Some wished it to be more accessible to more resorts and motorized vehicles. An important development took place in 1964. In that year, President Lyndon Johnson signed the Wilderness Act, which established the wilderness preservation system, which included the boundary waters. Additionally, the act defined the boundaries of the boundary waters. Kushby Lodge and Lake One were immediately outside the boundaries. Many resorts within the boundary eventually had to close, but given its location just outside the boundary, Kushby Lodge survived. One thing that makes Kushby Lodge distinctive is that it is from a period when small-scale, family-owned resorts provided a simple, rustic experience in the great outdoors in northern Minnesota. Much of that has now changed as resorts decreased by more than 80% between 1960 and 2017, which makes the family-run Kushby Lodge something of an oddity. Kushby Lodge is a rare surviving resort reflecting an earlier time. And we have a view of a couple canoeing on Lake One, and the view is to the southeast. Okay, John. The image at left is the main lodge building, and the image at right shows part of the lodge interior. It looks almost the same today. Both images date to the 1940s. All right, John. Some more historic photographs. At left, we see cabin number 7. The image dates from the 1930s. And the image at right represents cabin number 3. This photo also dates from the 1930s. Go ahead, John. Some additional historic images. At left is cabin number 13. The photo is from the 1940s. The photo at right is also cabin number 13. And it is also from the 1940s. Okay, John. Our period of significance is 1924 through 1964. The level of significance is state. The National Register criteria is A and C. Areas of significance, landscape architecture, and entertainment recreation. The period of significance begins in 1924 when the resort was established and continues to 1964 when the Wilderness Act was passed, a pivotal event in the history of the resort. Okay, John. Again, this is taken directly from the nomination. Quote, as Kushby Lodge approaches its 100th anniversary, the resort and its historic landscape continue to offer the type of wilderness experience that first attracted travelers to the region. Its history became intrinsically shaped by its proximity to the area that was to be designated as the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness. Kushby Lodge represents a rare, small-scale, family-owned resort, once ubiquitous in the state, and a reminder of the many resorts once found throughout the Boundary Waters, unquote. As such, it is eligible for listing in the National Register. And we do not have any correspondence with this.
Thank you, Dennis. Do we have anyone in the audience who would like to speak briefly about this nomination? It looks like Rolf is interested in commenting. Rolf, can you unmute yourself? John, does he need help doing that? Is Rolf with us yet? Rolf? Are you there?
You should be on
Okay,
mute now.
it looks like, okay, can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay, well, this is Rolf Anderson, the consultant who prepared the nomination. I would like to make a few comments, but now the owners of Kushby Lodge were trying to join us, and I believe Nicole Udovich was able to join us, at least through audio, and I think I'd like to see if Nicole is with us and would like to comment before I make a few remarks.
Hi, this is Nicole Udovich at Kuwishwe, and I cannot get my video. How honored I am to be a part of this discussion and the presentation, and we are just really thrilled about the nomination. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, Nicole.
Thank you for having me.
Rolf, did you have anything else that you wanted to
Yes,
say?
this is Rolf again. I'll just have a few comments to make. I first have to mention that the first time I visited Kushby Lodge was years ago when I entered the boundary waters on Lake One, just to the east of Kushby Lodge, and we paddled by the resort. And I never imagined many years later I'd be returning to prepare a National Register of Historic Places nomination. But when I returned for the nomination, it was certainly a very pleasant experience. And in the intervening years, I completed studies on rustic state park architecture, national forest architecture, early cabins, and so forth. And it was really remarkable to see a resort in such original condition. And I know there are members of the review board who are very much familiar with the Northwoods context, and I'll single out just perhaps one of you, Andrea Levasseur, who comes from the heart of the Northwoods and has certainly seen these changes over the years to our institution of Minnesota resorts and our cabins, and the way they certainly evolved into the modern era to represent something quite different than one used to experience historically. But Kushby Lodge clearly represents a bygone era. And as Dennis mentioned, particularly with the passage of the Wilderness Act, it's as if Kushby Lodge stepped back in time and returned to an earlier era, once motorized craft was prohibited, from the lake. Also the fact that the property is associated with the Boundary Water Canoe Area Wilderness and the controversies of the past 100 years, which, as you know, continue to this day, provide a remarkable opportunity to link that story into this nomination as well. But moreover, if you're like me and you don't sleep on the ground anymore, Kushby Lodge is a great place because it's a wonderful place to have a cabin, a roof over your heads, and yet you can venture out into the boundary waters, come back for the night, or venture out for an overnight trip. But you still experience that boundary waters feel in a very original way. My final comment, I just want to mention that the owners Frank and Nicole Udovich approached the nomination simply because they were interested in recognizing the significance of the property. They wondered if it might qualify for the National Register. There was no grant money for them. There or tax credits and so forth. They were simply interested in their property and its significance and its preservation. And I think that's very admirable. Thank you.
Thanks, Rolf. Anyone else from the audience who would like to make a comment about this nomination? And how about anyone on the board? Any comments or questions?
This is Chris Schulke. So I want to commend Rolf and Kushby Lodge because we have really gone through the same thing in Otter Tail County, where there were once literally hundreds and hundreds of resorts and very, very few resorts that are historic, actually, if any, right now. And so we're documenting as many as we can for historical purposes. But to see almost like a stage in time that is preserved with this resort is remarkable, because it does represent such an important piece of Minnesota history.
Thanks, Chris. Mary added. John, somebody else have a comment or question? Mary's added in the chat that it's a marvelous property and the integrity is amazing, in case you're not reading the chat.
This is
Somebody
Can
was
you-
getting started speaking. Pam,
I would like to make the motion to add this to the National Register. It is pristine. It is exactly what resorts are supposed to look like, up here anyway. I'm not Hale County, but certainly.
so Pam has made a motion. Is there a second?
I would second Frank White.
Frank, thank you. Any more discussion or comments?
Yeah, this is John Stark. I've got Ralph, nice written nomination. I really enjoyed the history and the history of resorts, and that area has been special to me too, because I was up there probably about 1973. And since then a number of times. This may be more of a question for Dennis, and it has to do with this nomination and some of the other ones. There's not a lot of current photographs of the cabins or anything like that. I was kind of missing that. I had to go onto the website, which is really good, and I also want to rent a cabin someday. But is there a reason for that? Is it more of a district thing? And
Well, there was, I think we had 45 photographs, modern day photographs.
is it something that wasn't attached then to the initial nomination, and there's additional photos that were added?
Yeah, the photos are online, John.
Okay, I'm going to miss that.
Yeah, the photos are next to the nomination. And it can be, I know it can be a little confusing sometimes. The first time I tried doing it, in fact, I kind of lost the photos. I didn't know where they were. But yeah, the photos are next to the nomination where you go online. And that did take a number. They take about 45, I think, or 42.
Okay, and interior, exterior, both?
I think they're mostly exterior.
Exterior.
Okay. And it's more because it's the region or the area, and it's not the specific building.
Yeah, it's a district. We're treating it as a district.
Okay.
Well, John, this is Rolf. If I can just jump, there's a photo of every contributing building, and as well as some non-contributing and views of the landscape as well.
Okay, thanks, Rob. I'll go back and look at it.
Madam Chair, this is Frank White.
Yes, Frank.
I have never been to the Boundary Waters. I love northern Minnesota. Duluth is one of my favorite places, but someday I'm going to get up there. But as I looked at the photos online that were included with the nomination, it just made me feel like I really wanted to be there, and what a relaxing place and an interesting place to be. Because of my knee, I can no longer get in a canoe, so that part would be out. But what a lovely place! What a great piece of history. As John just talked about, the story, the history was really an enjoyable piece to read, and a piece of Minnesota history.
Thanks, Frank.
So this is Andrea. Is everybody hearing me?
Yes.
Hi. Before I was with the Chippewa National Forest, I actually worked for the Superior National Forest. And my job was as the Boundary Waters archaeologist. So all I did all summer was paddle around the Boundary Waters. And I didn't go in at the Lake One entry very often, but I do remember being there a couple of times and seeing the Kushby Lodge. And my question, Rolf, is this resort's kind of unique because it is at an Boundary Waters entry point. And in fact, Lake One, I believe, is one of the top most frequently used entry points. And I was just wondering if you did any research to see whether there were some other lodges at entry points like this one, or if this one is rather unique in that way.
You know, Andrew, there were definitely other lodges on, you know, on the periphery, and those are the ones that then tended to survive because they might not have been included within the boundary. But for example, there were a number on Basswood Lake. You had to portage a bit to get there by boat, but that's one lake for an example of where there were resorts on the periphery, even up on the Echo Trail north of Ely, like in the direction northerly of Burnside Lake. There were resorts there as well, though I don't know if those survived.
My other suggestion was there was, I think on page 34 that you mentioned the entry points. And I would suggest maybe just a little a footnote to explain that entry to the boundary waters is by permit only, and the permit specifies what entry point that you have to go in. And because most people don't understand how restricted the entry to the boundary waters is. And I think that's kind of significant for this nomination because, as I said, I think Kushby or the Lake One entry point is one of the most heavily used in the boundary waters. So maybe just a footnote there to explain about the entry points and the permitting.
Sure, I'll be glad to make that adjustment, Andrea. And I think you're correct that it must be one of the most popular entry points.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Andrea. Thanks for persisting with the audio problems. You came through just fine. Let's see. Nicole's added a comment. Kushby is the only one on paddle-only BWCAW Lake, likely in the world. Others have motor limits. So I hope that helps with your question.
And board member Dyer has a question as well.
Thanks, Amy. Lindsay, go ahead.
Hi, thanks, Amy. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, okay, great. So yeah, I also loved reading through this nomination, and I just had a few questions. Reading about all these cabins in northern Minnesota, I left wondering about the fireplaces and whether or not any of them had fireplaces within. It seemed like that's something that should be added to the descriptions. You know, maybe even in the common areas. Wondering if they're there. And then I was also left wondering about the seasonality of it, whether or not it operated in the winter. Also a little bit of an idea of numbers throughout the years, numbers of visitors. It did a great job of capturing the boundary waters area, but I was wondering more about the history of the visitation to the lodge itself and
Sure, Lindsay. The resort was definitely seasonal. In fact, in its early years, you had to hike in to the resort. There are no stone or brick fireplaces, so that's why you didn't see that. And in terms of visitation historically, it was a little hard to actually to get firm figures, but just the fact that the resort kept adding cabins seems to substantiate that you know they had a vibrant business, and they were slightly larger than the average resort, just slightly. So it seemed to reinforce the point that there was the volume of business was significant. But I think what we can see if Nicole wants to add to this as well.
Sure, you had a question specifically about the seasonality, and we run just for fishing open through the third weekend in September.
Thanks, Nicole. Any other questions or comments?
I guess mainly that would be because lines are above ground. And so the fear of freezing always played a part of how long we can take customers each year.
This is John Stark. Can I second Pam's motion? Or was that done already?
Yeah, I think we got
Oh,
a
it's done.
second.
Okay.
So you got the third, John.
Third. There we go. Always one short.
Any other comments or questions before we vote? All right. I remember the roll call. Pam, we'll start with you.
Aye.
John Decker?
Aye.
Lindsay Dyer?
Aye.
Okay, Philip?
Aye.
Andrea?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Chris?
Yes.
Kate?
Aye.
John Stark?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Frank? Frank, are you there? Oh, no, Frank's taken off. It's all right. Doesn't matter what he votes because there he is. I vote yes. We're waiting for Frank to get back. Hey, Frank, yes or no? We're voting. Thumbs up? Yes or no? You're muted right now.
Thumbs up, I'm sorry. I had to run to the restroom.
It's good. It's just fine. Yes or no? Did you say yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Excellent. All right. Thanks, everybody, for that. And now we're on to our second nomination, West Concord High School in Dodge County, and that's Ginny doing the presentation.
Hi, y'all. John is going to share the video with me, so we'll sit and watch my computer, or you can watch me watch my computer for a minute. Any luck, John? I am now presenting.
Okay, good, you got it.
Can you see my screen? Which screen can you see?
You still just see you.
Just me. All right, I think I'm having the same trouble that Dennis had. Oh, wait, there's my share button. Got it. Are you able to see my
Perfect.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so the West Concord High School in West Concord, Dodge County. Jane Beisel and Steve Williams are the authors from Blue Planet Museum Consulting, LLC. This property's nomination was sponsored by the Minnesota Cultural and Historical Grant Program. Constructed in 1902 and subsequently expanded in 1914 and again in 1936, the West Concord High School is comprised of two rectangular buildings connected by a hyphen. The school is located in a residential neighborhood just southeast of West Concord Central Business District, on its original site, which includes a playground acquired in 1951. In 1901, the school board purchased the site and commissioned Minneapolis architect Fremont D. Orff to design a school building. The building served as the educational needs of local youth for more than 10 years, until the student body outgrew the facility. To maintain its accreditation and meet demand, the school building would need to be modernized and enlarged. A 4-room addition containing dedicated classrooms for agriculture, cooking, and sewing, and manual training was designed by H. Edward Walker and constructed in 1914. On the left, we see the east facade of the 1902-1914 building, camera looking west, and on the right is the 1902 portion of the building is outlined in red. The 1902 portion comprises about 2/3 of the building's footprint and exhibits characteristics of the late Victorian Renaissance Revival style. The 1914 addition was designed in the Prairie School style, although its size, shape, and materials are consistent with those of the original building. When completed, The building was equipped with indoor plumbing and electrical lights and would also incorporated large south-facing windows in the design of its new classrooms. On the right is the south facade of the 1914 building, camera looking north, and on the left is the west facade of the same building, camera looking east. Continued growth, primarily caused by rural school consolidation, again stretched West Concord High School's capacity after the Second World War. The school's second building was constructed north of the first one in 1936, along with a two-story brick hyphen connecting the two. The new building was designed in the WPA modern style. On the right, on the left, we see the east facade of the hyphen, camera looking west. And on the right, we see the north and west facades of the 1936 building, camera looking southeast. The interior of the school is characterized by the relative ease of circulation between the two buildings. The basement, first and second floors of the 1902-1914 building are organized around central L or T-shaped hallways. The 1936 building houses the school's gymnasium, auditorium, library, and study hall, and is characterized by flexible, open spaces on both floors. Through ongoing, publicly supported building campaigns, West Concord High School kept pace with the evolving educational requirements of the day, providing appropriate space for new curriculum as well as extracurricular activities as the state required. The building also facilitated the engagement of students with the surrounding community. On the right, we see the 1902-1914 building at the second floor hallway, camera looking south. And on the left, we see a circa 1925 photograph of that building. Here we see two more views of the 1902-1914 building. On the left is the basement, southeast classroom, camera looking southeast. And on the right is the second floor east classroom, camera looking southeast. Here is the interior of the 1936 building. On the left is the gymnasium looking north. And on the right is an undated photograph of the building. In 1958, a new junior-senior high school was constructed south of West Concord. This serves 7th through 12th grade students, and the West Concord High School facility became the new district elementary school. In 1990, voters in West Concord, Dodge Center, and Claremont consolidated once more, and all 6th through 8th grade students attended classes in West Concord's 1958 junior-senior high school building. Shortly thereafter, the West Concord Historical Society purchased the school facility and began to transform it into a local history museum and community space. Oops. So on the left, lower left, we see the hyphen and the second floor looking north. In the center, we see the 1936 building, second floor study hall, camera looking southwest. And on the right is the 1936 building, second floor library, camera looking northeast. The period of significance for this building is 1902 to 1958. The level of significance is local. The National Register criterion is A, and the area of significance is education. The period of significance extends from the 1902 construction of its first building through 1958 when the school was consolidated. West Concord High School is associated with the development of public education in West Concord and is a physical representation of larger statewide trends in the development of public schools during the first half of the 20th century. For this reason, it is eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. We have no correspondence about this property.
Thanks, Jenny.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone who is interested in making a statement about this from the audience? Anyone interested in speaking up?
Kurt.
Jenny,
Sorry?
do you have that?
Where is West Concord?
Oh, southwest. Somebody's going to know quicker than I will. I'm sorry.
It's about 30 miles west of Owatonna, or east of Owatonna.
West of Owatonna.
East of Owatonna.
East of Owatonna. Okay.
On the way towards Rochester and
Thank you,
north.
John.
Yep.
Southeast, not southwest. I apologize.
Any other comments or questions? Anything about the nomination? Anyone? So Jenny, it looks like we can still see your screen. Is that what you want?
Do you
Nice
see?
views of the building. It's good.
Okay, thank you. I was just trying to get to the letters for the next one. I apologize.
Any other comments or questions or a motion to approve?
This is Mary. I'm just going to jump in with a quick little comment here. I noticed that in a particular section on facilities reforms, it says something about the progressive education movement advocating for school design features intended to support student health and hygiene between 1910 and 1920. And it struck me that the 1918 flu occurred during that time. And I wonder how much that affected how they designed the building.
That is one thing that I love about schools is you do see that progressive reform as soon as they can possibly get it in. I have no doubt that next year we'll start to see hand sanitizing stations as part of next to water fountains in schools. It was not addressed specifically, but I have no doubt that it had a lot to do with it. I'm ready for the book. I'm ready for the book on design elements incorporated into schools based on health and safety.
Thanks, Jenny.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing really surprising about these two buildings. They're very utilitarian. Does that affect the nomination at all?
And for the record, that's Board Member Brunfeld.
Yeah. About that.
Okay. Ginny, you have anything on it?
Yes, thank you, Chair Anderson. I would say that if this nomination was going forward under criterion C for its architecture, I would anticipate that the stylistic attributes and the architecture itself would be much more exciting. However, this is under criterion A in the form of education. And despite the humble nature of the architecture, I would argue that it still very much represents the evolution of education in West Concord. And I would actually say that there are some really striking features specifically to the 1936 buildings, specifically the skylights. Mm-hmm. Those are really beautiful in the upstairs study hall sections. And as well as the intact gymnasium, which also has its stage. Those are pieces that we often see sort of modified over the years. So this building was never a high style property. However, I think that she retains her bones really well.
Well, I think Colleen Hain made a chat comment that I think is really good.
Hey,
my last one. I am here. Colleen, are you there? Right, I am here representing. Okay, tell us what you wrote.
I wrote that as so much of our main street has disappeared in West Concord, like so many small towns, the old brick faces have been torn down. There's not much left. The school is like the centerpiece of the town and the only place that really shows what life was like here once and links us from today to the past. I don't think that's really what I wrote, but it's the same idea. And the skylight in the research room and in the study hall, those are my very, very favorite parts of the building. They're just so unique. And also the fact that the annex where those skylights are was a WPA project is kind of interesting. And driven by the Chatfield Performing Arts Center lately, and it's almost a carbon copy. That was built in 36 too. I mean, it's amazing how much they're alike. But that one has been restored and we haven't been restored yet. But anyway.
Thanks, Colleen.
You're welcome.
Hi, everyone. Jane Beisel. I was having some technical difficulty earlier, but I am one of the authors of the nomination. And
Thank you. Welcome.
I wanted to say that I second Colleen's observation that this is a beacon in the community. It's as you drive into West Concord, it is the largest by far of any building in the town. And it was at one time was the largest high school in Dodge County. Many people have graduated from the school and have retained a residence in the vicinity and remember and connect to Dodge County, connect to West Concord through the school itself. It's quite a landmark locally.
Thanks, Jane. That's helpful.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve this nomination.
Pam's made a motion. Is there a second?
This is John Stark. This time I get to be second, right?
You are second, John Stark.
I'd love to second that motion.
Thanks, John. Any other discussion? Chris, are you raising your hand? Okay. Any other discussion or questions? Ready for a vote? All right, here we go. Pam. John Decker.
Aye.
Lindsay.
Aye.
Philip.
Aye.
Andrea.
Aye.
Rob.
Aye.
Steve.
Aye.
Chris. Chris, are you there? Yvonne.
Sorry, did you just say Kate?
Yes, I did. Are you voting yes or no, ma'am?
Aye.
John Stark.
Aye.
Chris votes yes. Okay, excellent. John Stark says yes. Mary.
Aye.
Frank.
Aye.
And I join the crowd with a yes vote. Thanks very much, everybody. And we're sticking with you again, right? For the District 2 school in Carver County.
So this is the District Number 2 school in San Francisco Township, Carver County. Dan Hoisington is the author from Hoisington Preservation Consultants. District Number 22, now San Francisco Township Hall, is located at 17380 Homestead Road in the agricultural highlands of the Minnesota River Valley in rural Carver County. The District Number 22 school was constructed according to plans disseminated by the state of Minnesota. The plans were promoted as education in Minnesota transitioned during the Progressive era. Here we see the view of the south facade and west elevation, view to the northeast. The builders of the school took advantage of local materials, and instead of constructing the building with wood, as design number 3 suggested, they used Chaska brick, a distinctive brick made only a few miles away, known for its cream color, high clay content, and quality. Additional changes included the elimination of the half basement and the corresponding east side basement windows, and the continued use of an outhouse instead of an interior restroom. The builders also added a cupola. On the left is the south facade and east elevations, view to the northwest. At the top right is the exterior rendering from the Minnesota Standard School Plan of design number 3. And at the bottom right is a detail of the porch and entryway, view to the east. In the 30 years that the building served as a center for local education, its curriculum reflected common methods of the era. Students from nearby farms gathered for classes 8 months of the year, and the number of students remained small, between 8 and 18 pupils per year, ranging from 1st through 8th grade. Depending on the age and composition of each year, only a few grade levels might be represented. Here's a detail of the school plaque, view to the northwest, and the west and north elevations, view to the east. New standards related to education and social well-being proliferated in the early 20th century. The ideas for reforming education through the school building found their way into rural areas through widespread distribution of plan books. The buildings were commonly called the one-room schoolhouse. The curriculum was dictated by the county superintendent's office and used standardized textbooks. The library provided children with easy access to those books. Here we see the main classroom, the view to the north, and at left is the interior floor plan of Minnesota Standard School Plan Design Number 3. At the interior, many of the progressive tenants can still be seen today. In addition to the library room, a vestibule, and 2 coat rooms, the use of a wall of windows in the schoolroom, with its location based on prevailing winds and morning sun, gave students good light by which to work. While the glass is covered with foam core, the windows are extant. On the left, we see the library, the view to the north, and on the right, the main classroom and its exterior window openings, the view to the east. The school also became the primary social anchor for this rural community, welcoming all residents to community-centered events. It is currently the polling place. On the left, we see the main classroom, view to the south, and on the right, the entry vestibule, view to the south. Motivated, at least in part, by mounting cost, District Number 2 decided to transfer students from the school in 1946. The district remained a legal entity for a few more years, even as they sent their children elsewhere. In 1950, it formally terminated with a consolidation with 5 other nearby districts. In 1961, the San Francisco Township acquired the property for its use as a town hall. Here we're seeing the west elevation, the view to the northeast, and a 1946 historic photo of roughly the same view. The period of significance is 1917 to 1942. The level of significance is local. National Register criteria A and C, areas of significance, education, and architecture. The period of significance under criterion A extends through the use of the building as a school, beginning with the construction in 1917 and ending with its closing in 1946. The period of significance for criterion C is limited to the year of its construction. District Number 22 school in San Francisco Township is distinct as a local reflection of a one-room schoolhouse, a once ubiquitous property type that today is increasingly rare. It is also a well-preserved example of a standard school design promoted by the state superintendent of public instruction. For these reasons, it is eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny.
No
Any correspondence?
No, ma'am.
Okay, great. First, is there
I
anyone?
have a question.
Hang on, Pam, just a second. Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to speak about the nomination?
Yeah, this is Philip Solsing.
Oh.
Yeah, I'd like to say something. I think Dan Hoisington would like to say something as well, and Maddie would too, but just to set the stage. I know it's been heralded as a school building as a historic building, but it's really the only public building we have in San Francisco Township. So we'd like to preserve it as a historical place. We still use it every month for township meetings, and we use it for our elections. A little history about it. It represents a good history of San Francisco Township. You probably don't know it, but the person who founded San Francisco Township was a member of the Donner Party. He went to San Francisco, he came back, and he founded San Francisco, the town of San Francisco, which San Francisco Township is named after. And it's the only township that's along the Minnesota River in Carver County. And we're kind of proud of it. It's a unique structure, and it's something we would like to preserve for the township itself. So, aside from being a school, it's a treasure for our township. And I don't know if Maddie or Dan would like to talk a little bit more. I'd appreciate that.
Thank you. Dan, Maddie, anybody else want to speak?
Dan is the one who did the substantive historical review, so I think he's the expert. I just wanted to jump in with this kind of fun piece of very current history, which is that maybe you all noticed on voting day, on November 3rd, there was a 2-page spread of our township town hall featured in the Star Tribune, and it to me it felt like this indicates that it's not only special to us, but I think it does have sort of the historic import that this kind of designation is for. So anyway, that's my little vote of confidence.
Thank you.
This is Dan Hoisington. Can you hear me?
Hi, Dan. Yes, we can.
Okay. I love this building. In a time of COVID, we try to understand what community is. And this was the centerpiece of a small community of farmers mostly, who were trying to do the right thing. So as they were educating their children, they went to the state to get the best design. They went a little bit overboard to get brick. And that continues even today with the building and its use. So to me, it's really special and totally worthy of the National Register.
Dan, anyone on the board have any comments or questions? Yeah, Pam, you were
Pam.
great. Thank you. Go ahead. Yep.
I love the building. I think it's wonderful. I think the white blocks on the windows are unfortunate, and I hope somebody's going to do something about that. Don't do anything for the building at all. Maybe you don't have the money right now, but really seriously think about getting rid of those white blocks of whatever that is. But it's a wonderful building, and I make a motion that we approve it.
Thank you, Pam, for the motion. Is there a second?
This is Mary.
John Decker.
Mary? John
I was
Decker?
going to second it. John can have it.
Okay.
Oh,
John Decker.
I will second.
Thank you.
Yes. I beat Mary to it.
This is Andrea. This is Andrea. I just had a quick comment. About 3 years ago, I did a nomination for a school in my area in Hubbard County. And the name of this school is Consolidated School District number 22. And, so I'm just wondering, I don't know if you guys have a convention that you use for naming schools, but you know, the school district naming in the state has gone through several phases, starting with the common school, which this is, through the graded schools and the consolidated schools and now the K-12 system that we have. And at one point, there were more than 7,600 districts statewide, and it's been reduced to a little bit over 300 now. So it is not inconceivable that there could be in future yet a third school called District 22 that goes up for a nomination. So I just wanted to call that to your attention. I don't know if you have a certain convention that you use when you're naming these schools, but maybe you want to insert the word common school in there or something. I don't know.
Thank you, Andrea. The convention is typically what the building is called during its period of significance. But maybe Dan and I can connect on a little bit later in the next week and see if maybe there's a more accurate, not accurate, a more specific name that we could use.
Okay, I'm just thinking if there's a database and somebody queries on District 22, they're
Absolutely.
Going to get more
Well, with luck, they won't be in the same county, so maybe that will be helpful. But we'll definitely. I don't think this is something the National Park Service thought about when they figured out historic naming conventions. And I do remember Consolidated School District number 22. So we'll take a look at that and see if there's something that can be done. And if not, then we'll just keep an eye out for it. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other comments or questions?
John Decker. I love the reuse of the schools, especially rural schools, to for a public space like township meetings, elections. I think there's more than one example in the state, but this is a cool example of them doing it.
Thanks, John. Other comments or questions? Anything else? Ready to vote? Pam, you're up. Thank you. John Decker.
Aye.
Lindsay.
Aye.
Philip.
Aye.
Andrea.
Aye.
Rob.
Aye.
Steve.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Nate.
Aye.
Stark. We'll come back to you, Mary.
Aye.
Frank.
Aye.
John, are you there? Did I miss you?
Yes, aye.
Thank you. And I also vote yes. Okay, thanks everybody. And Ginny stays with us for the Hudson Manufacturing Company factory in Hastings, Dakota County. Take it away, Ginny.
Thank you, Chair Anderson. You're stuck with me through the middle, and then you get Dennis again at the end. So this is the Hudson Manufacturing Company factory in Hastings, Dakota County. Ashlyn Ackerman from Wayland Ventures is technically the author, although the information research was provided by Amy Lucas at Landscape Research, LLC. The Hudson Manufacturing Company factory at 200 West 2nd Street is a two-story brick industrial building in Hastings, Minnesota, just west of the main commercial area. On the left, we're seeing the exterior south and east facades of Building B, and on the right is the exterior south and west facades of Building A. The central portion forms a U-shaped plan with the east wing completed in 1914 and the central and west wings completed in 1921. A two-story brick addition at the east elevation was completed in 1927, and a two-story brick addition at the north was constructed in 1946. The building's interior is open and utilitarian with exposed structural elements. On the right, we see the exterior south facade of Building B, and on the left is a rough sketch of the additions. The Hudson Manufacturing Company has its roots in the Hudson and Thurber Company, which was formed by H.D. Hudson and Miles S. Thurber. Headquartered in Minneapolis, the company employed 40 salesmen and was the largest distributor of agricultural supplies in the Northwest in the late 19th century. On the left is the exterior of the south facade, Building C, and in the middle is the north and east facades of Buildings C and D. In 1906, Hudson and Thurber transitioned from agricultural equipment dealer to an agricultural equipment manufacturer. In 1909, they relocated to the compression sprayer factory. In 1909, they relocated the compression sprayer factory to the R.C. Libby sash, door, and blind factory at the subject site in Hastings. Construction of the east wing of the factory in 1914 followed a fire at the Libby building. One brick wall of the original 1913 factory partially remains, but it was completely integrated into the new 1914 construction. On the left, we see the west facade of Building B, and on the right are the west facades of Buildings B and D. Hudson purchased Thurber's share of the business in 1917 and renamed the firm the Hudson Manufacturing Company. Throughout its history, the company has grown through merger and acquisition. Manufacturing in Hastings has expanded with the breadth of the company. On the left, we see the east facade of Building D, and on the right are the west facades of Buildings B and D. In 1921, the building's original footprint was doubled in size to form a U-shaped plan around a decorative courtyard. In the 1920s, the Hastings factory was producing 90% of the agricultural sprayers and dusters sold in the country. And here is a circa 1921 image of the factory as it stood at the time. In 1927, Hudson purchased the Albert Lee Sprayer Company of Albert Lee and moved the hand sprayer manufacturing to the Hastings factory, making Hudson Manufacturing Company the largest industry in Dakota County with 240 employees. In 1929, the headquarters of the company moved to Chicago, but by the 1930s, Hudson translated catalogs for the international market. Despite the move of the headquarters to Chicago, the sprayer section of the company stayed in Hastings. At the right, we see the east facade of Building A, and at the left, a circa 1925 photograph of roughly the same angle. During World War II, the sprayer and duster factory in Hastings was taken out of production for civilian needs for 2 years. During that time, the factory manufactured sprayers and dusters for the armed services, which specifically targeted mosquitoes to stop the spread of malaria among soldiers. Here we see the exterior of the east facade of Building C, and at right, the exterior of the north facade of Building C. Following World War II, population growth and suburban expansion led to the industry growth in lawn care. While many divisions of Hudson Manufacturing were sold in the 1940s, sprayer manufacturing for lawn care emerged as a focus for innovation and instigated further factory growth in Hastings. At left, we see the interior of the first floor shed roof area of Building C. And at the right, we see a 1950s bird's eye view of the factory. In 1950, H.D. Hudson Manufacturing teamed with the World Health Organization to provide a prototype sprayer to eradicate malaria and to continue in the, quote, disease vector control program, end quote. On the left, we see the interior of the first floor wood structure of Building B, and at the right, the interior second floor wood structure and roof trusses of Building B. More photographs of the interior. At the left is the second floor of Building C, and at the right is the second floor and the party wall. Later, in the mid to late 20th century, eastern portions of the factory were removed as part of the Mississippi River Bridge replacement in 2010. The factory was vacated in 2011, and a 1974 addition at the west was demolished in 2012. Sorry, my notes were funny. Mid-century additions to the property were demolished and removed as part of the Mississippi River Bridge replacement in 2010. The factory was vacated in 2011, and the 1974 addition at the west was demolished in 2012. On the left, we see the second floor concrete structure of Building D, and on the right, we see that construction of the new Mississippi River Bridge. The period of significance for this property is 1914 to 1970. The level of significance is local. The National Register criterion is A, and the area of significance is industry. The period of significance reflects the continued use of the factory, marked by the established 50-year threshold for significance. The Hudson Manufacturing Company was one of the country's largest 20th century manufacturers of agricultural equipment. Because of the buildings associated with the firm's national success as an agricultural equipment manufacturer, it is eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. We do have one piece of correspondence for this property. Give me just a second. I'll be happy to bring it up. November 2nd of 2020, Mayor Mary Fassbender of the city of Hastings writes, as a certified local government, quote, as a certified local government without a commissioner meeting federal standards of a professional historian, we wish to provide comment on the subject nomination as an interested party. The Hudson Manufacturing Company factory has long been viewed as a significant contributor to the development of Hastings industry and was one of the city's largest employers for a century. The Hastings Heritage Preservation Commission voted unanimously to support the nomination. Support of the proposed nomination is additionally shared by the mayor and city council. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. Any statements or comments from the audience about this nomination? Would anyone like to speak about this?
This is Pam. I always just think that the original building is beautiful, and then they bastardize them by covering up windows and hiding the architectural detail. I think it's criminal. And this building as it stands today doesn't remotely reflect what it looked like once upon a time. And I think that's tragic. Enough said.
Thanks, Pam. Ginny, do you have any comment? Does it affect the integrity at all to have those sorts of changes? Should we be looking at that as a side factor?
Yes, Pam brought up an interesting point. I did not believe that the integrity of this property was compromised. The window openings do maintain their original and their historic configuration to the best of my knowledge. And I believe that the sashes and a large part of the building are also historic. So I am intrigued by Pam's comment and interested. What section exactly? Yeah.
Well, if you go back towards the beginning of your presentation, that building was gorgeous. And now it just looks like a derelict. And that's really unfortunate. That's the one.
This one?
Yes. It looks derelict.
That deferred maintenance is certainly of concern. But I have to be honest with you here. The fenestration looks primarily the same. We still have the roof vents. I do believe that the Hudson Manufacturing Company probably was much prouder of this building than perhaps the city. Well, that's not even fair to say, because I know the city of Hastings is incredibly proud of this property. Perhaps they had more funding and the paint was new, but I'm still not, I think, seeing what you're seeing when it comes to the integrity concern.
Ginny, this is John Stark.
I'm not sure. Go ahead, John.
Okay. Pam, maybe I can put you at ease a little bit. I think because the city has taken over the building and it's vacant, that they need to mothball it and protect it. So what you see on boarded up windows is a way to keep the existing character and window frames and everything in place without being vandalized. Same thing with the school, when that's sitting empty, on the previous nomination in the middle of nowhere and only used once a month. You've got to protect it from vandals. So what you're seeing here, you can see the boards are protecting from people getting in, upstairs windows from, as a kid, I threw rocks at old buildings and broke windows, so I know what that is. I think the integrity of it is marvelous here. What's there, that it can be brought back to being a beautiful building on this site. And having all those windows into a factory area, that's unique for the history and the workers that work there. I do recall my dad talking about this, the Hudson sprayers is a thing, and we had a relative who lived in Hudson and drove by this building a number of times. So I think this is a great project to nominate.
Thank you for that clarification, John.
I would like
to put a couple of more. Go ahead.
That was Pam. I believe she said that she would love to see it restored. And to the best of my knowledge, there is a plan to do just that.
Ashlyn has added a couple of comments in the chat that most of the window sashes are still there behind the plywood. The galvanized roof ventilators are still present in this property. And the mid-century additions that were removed in 2010 as part of the bridge project actually revealed more of the historic facades.
Thank you, Ashlyn. And I apologize, I can't see the chat.
Not opposed to the nomination. I just am feeling a sense of regret that these historic buildings are so often left to look like derelicts. And this one is a prime example of what happens when they're allowed to look like derelicts. I see what John is saying, but maybe one of the reasons why they're vandalized is because they look like this.
We're very grateful that Ashlyn and her group in the city of Hastings has recognized the potential.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Chair, this is Frank White.
Yes.
I think the comments are great from both angles. I think sometimes, and this is even in Minneapolis, St. Paul, wherever, sometimes when you cover things up, it almost says that it's okay to vandalize me. It's a different opinion, and I get that you do it to protect, but sometimes it almost gives another statement of, we don't care about this building. So, and hopefully they'll be restored at some point, but that's a lot of windows.
Steve, you had a comment in the chat. Do you want to say that to everybody?
Sure. Our family farm has a Hudson sprayer, so I very much appreciate this nomination, and really didn't appreciate what we had in the well house, to be frank about it. The one comment I do have is that when we talk about agricultural sprayers today, oftentimes we're talking about very large motorized units that you could drive a car under, frankly, and nothing that large, I believe, came out of this facility. I'm wondering if we could add a little bit of language just to say non-motorized agricultural sprayers or something to that effect to tighten it up a little bit.
We can certainly do that. Thank you, Steve. We also, Ashlyn was kind enough to provide, yes, Ashlyn was kind enough to provide some photographs, I believe, of actual product shots from a few of the promotional materials. Perhaps if we add those, it will also kind of underscore the fact that we're talking about handheld sprayers at this point.
Thank you. Board Member Olson. Any other comments or questions? Ashlyn's hanging out there and tossing things into the mix, and so I'm sure she could handle any other questions that you have.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Frank.
Since this is being recorded, can we have John tell us where he broke those windows at?
Frank, there are so many of them, I couldn't remember them all.
So much vandalism in John's youth. That's right. John Stark will make that clear for the recording. John Decker, I'm sure, was a model citizen. So,
I beg for forgiveness.
Any other comments or questions, or do you have a motion?
Chris Schulke, I make a motion to accept this nomination.
Thank you. It looks like Steve Olson is either waving at us or ready to do a. We'll say he's offering us.
Yes.
So Chris and Steve have the honors on this one. Any other discussion before we vote? All right. All right, John Decker. Looks like a yes or number 10. Thank you, Lindsay.
Aye.
Thank you, Philip.
Aye.
Andrea.
Aye.
Rob.
Aye.
Steve.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
John Stark.
Aye.
Mary.
Aye.
Frank.
Aye. And John, I broke a few windows myself.
And so John, yes, vote. I also vote yes. So thanks to everybody for that. And Ginny has one more to share with us, correct? About to wrap up her evening with Northrop King and Company, Minneapolis, Hennepin County.
Thank you. That was written by Amy Lucas from Landscape Research. The Northrop King and Company Industrial Complex is located at 1500 Jackson Street Northeast in Minneapolis. The 11-acre site is located on an irregular parcel between the Great Northern and Burlington Northern Santa Fe railroad tracks. Here we see the exteriors of buildings 1, 1A, 2, and 6, camera facing northwest. The Utilitarian style factory complex was constructed by the Northrop King and Company between 1916 and 1947 and is comprised of 3 buildings with multiple additions, as well as freestanding storage buildings and grain silos. Here we see the exterior of the silos, fumigation building, millwright shop, and building number 2, camera facing south. The seed processing and storage buildings are a mix of wood frame and reinforced concrete and were built by contractors Barnett and Record Company and the Auguste Cedar Stand Company. The consistent brown brick cladding provides a cohesive design to the large complex. On the left, we see building number 10 and building number 4, camera facing south. And on the right, building number 4 and building number 3, camera facing north. The Northrop King and Company headquarters was well situated, with 3 rail spur lines. The 3 rail spur lines accessed the 3 long seed buildings and had capacity for 53 rail cars each. The strategic location at the confluence of the major railroads allowed the company to receive seed as well as ship the cold climate seed to a nationwide market. On the left, we see building number 3, camera facing northwest, and on the right is the interior of building number 3, titled Corn Drying in 1919. Here is the exterior of building 1, west elevation, and building number 2, south and west elevations, camera facing northeast. And at the right is the interior of building number 1, 4th floor. It's the date unknown, it's seed storage. In the 1910s, farming entered an era of rapid mechanization with the gasoline-powered tractor and the land-grant universities educating farmers on crops, husbandry, and soil research. Land-grant universities assisted the government with seed certification, which standardized the seed lots and ensured quality and performance. At left, we see the exterior of buildings 1A, annex, building number 9, and building number 9A, camera facing northwest. And at the right are the silos, building number 2, building number 3A, building number 3, building number 8, camera facing south. Construction of the new Northrop King and Company facility was well timed with the arrival of World War I, which drastically altered the world's food economy. In the years leading up to the war, the United States was still dependent on Europe for approximately 90% of all their seed, for beet, turnip, rutabaga, and various other vegetables and most flowers. At the left, we see building 1A, camera facing north, and at right, we see building number 5 and 9A, camera facing southeast. World War I forced the United States to become more self-sufficient, and the American seed trade entered a period of tremendous activity and expansion. The Northrop King and Company was the country's only full-service seed company, producing a complete line of vegetable, flower, and field seed. And with the new facility, the company was poised for exponential growth. The company supported the government's War Garden campaign in its newspaper advertisements. And Charles Massey served as the War Service Committee of the American Seed Trade Association, which cooperated with the Department of Agriculture during the war. On the left, we see the interior of building number 2 on the 5th floor, camera facing south. And at the right, the interior of building number 3, 2nd floor, camera facing north. Following World War I, the Northrop King and Company headquarters underwent a second phase of construction to accommodate the growing market. On the left, we see building number 2, which is the cleaning house, east elevation, and building number 1, east elevation, camera facing west. And on the right, we see a photograph of the seed separators in 1919 in building number 2. Successful seed and climate research allowed Northrop King and Company to expand production at the headquarters and other regions of the country. By 1959, the large variety of seed processed at the main plant were divided into 4 divisions. That year, the company produced more than 150 varieties of farm seed. On the left, we see a garage and pump house, camera facing northwest. And at the right, building number 5 and building number 9A, camera facing southeast. Here on the left, we see the company offices in building number 1 in 1917. And at the right, the interior of building number 1, first floor, camera facing south after the most recent tax credit project. I'm sorry, the most recent rehabilitation. In 1963, the company had 1,200 full-time employees, with more than half working in the Minneapolis headquarters. The company sold seed to every state as well as to many countries. In 1976, the Northrop King and Company was sold to Sandoz Limited, a Swiss agrochemical and pharmaceutical firm. At the time, the offices were closed, but the seed plant continued to operate as a division of Sandoz until 1986, when the building was sold to Shamrock Properties. In 1996, parts of the complex were adapted into artist studios, and in 2019, the building was sold to ArtSpace, a developer of artist housing. At the left, we see building number 9 and building number 5, camera facing southwest. And at the right, we see a photograph of the seed lab in 1943. The period of significance for this building is 1916 to 1976. The level of significance is local. The National Register criterion is A, and the area of significance is industry. The period of significance is 1916, when the first building was constructed, until 1976, when the company was sold. The industrial complex is significant as the office and manufacturing headquarters of the Northrop King and Company, which grew to become the country's largest wholesale seed facility, producing a complete line of vegetable, flower, and field seeds. For its significant contributions to the 20th century commercial seed trade, the property is eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. We do have one piece of, you're welcome.
Correspondence.
We do, sorry, one piece of correspondence for this property. This was sent by Rob Selecki from the Community Planning and Economic Development Department of the City of Minneapolis. Excuse me, he writes, quote, these comments are being submitted by an interested party by the staff of the Minneapolis Department of Community Planning and Economic Development on behalf of the Minneapolis Heritage Preservation Commission. The commission supports the nomination and concurs that the Northrop King and Company complex is historically significant under National Register criteria A for industry, for its significance and contribution to the seed trade in the 20th century. Unquote. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. Anyone in the audience interested in making a comment or a statement about the nomination? Okay, how about on the board? Interested in a comment, have a question?
Madam Chair, Frank White.
Yes, Frank.
This nomination is for me, somebody that has grown up in the city. It's one of the nominations over the years that has just amazed me, of something that has impacted all of us, not only locally but nationally. And somebody, I never would have had any idea about seed and chicken feed that had such a large volume of need. And as I think about it, of course, but you know, as a younger person growing up, my world was something else, and this is just amazing to me. I've learned so much reading these nominations, and what an impact this company and the the owners had on our country.
Thanks, Frank. Other comments or questions?
This is Pam. I'd like to make a motion to add this to the National Register.
Pam's moved that we approve this nomination and send it forward. Any second?
Board Member Koski seconds.
Thank you, Philip. Board Member Koski does the second on this. Any further discussion?
I had one question.
Yeah.
I know that in the nomination, it talks about how the rail spurs were removed between the buildings, but I'm just wondering if we're certain that they had been completely removed or if they had been paved over. Might they still exist below the surface?
Amy Lucas, you're here. Do you happen to know the answer to that question?
I do. Actually, there are a few in between the buildings, actually, and they do have some grass over them, but they were removed when they paved the parking lot. But there are some, at least one line partially between buildings 3 and 4 over there.
And are those identified in a site plan or somewhere in the narrative? I didn't see it.
They are not visible. The architects actually just told me recently when they were digging around the site that they had found some in between the two buildings. It's the really weedy area in the photographs. The tunnels between the buildings, the poured concrete tunnels between the buildings, are right on the surface of the ground, and they were strengthened in the areas where the tracks ran over them. And since then, they've had a lot of dirt and fill put in. But the only tracks they have found so far by digging were the ones in between that one set of buildings.
Well, I bring it up because I remember when the city of Minneapolis was reviewing the grain-built brewery, and there were train rail tracks, and the plan was to somehow incorporate them into the landscape. But by the time we had got to the renovation part of the project, the contractor had already removed them. So it'd be nice to somehow document where these are in case that would be a possibility in the future.
Well, you're going to love this then, because this is a tax credit rehab project. And the reason they were doing the big dig around everything is because there is a fair amount of drainage to deal with. And so far, they are going to put a semblance of all the tracks and where they were back into the landscaping as part of their grant for the kind of large scale drainage that's going to happen on the site. So they'll be happy to hear that you agree with them.
That's great. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Other comments or questions?
This is John Decker.
Hey, John.
The long history of this company speaks for itself.
Anything else? Other comments or questions?
This is John Stark. Ginny, you were cutting out on me a little bit when you were reading the letter from the HPC, but I know that they mentioned the period of significance, 1976. And is that the right way to go, or what does it limit the developer to? I assume that is something that both SHPO and National Park Service will be reviewing and coming up with a defining period or date, or is that fixed already?
Well, 1976 did appear to be the most appropriate. It was, and Amy Lucas, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was the year that the company began to decline in importance. We actually, Amy and I actually went back and forth about whether or not it should end in 1970, because technically that's the 50-year mark. But we determined that the 6 extra years, because of the length of time the property was significant prior to the cutoff, that it should actually extend to 76. I got the impression from the Minneapolis letter that they actually wanted the property to go longer. Is that the impression you got, or did you get?
I was thinking it would be, 1960 or something or earlier, because of modern additions or changes that weren't. It's much more difficult sometimes to try to keep things that weren't truly historic, but were changes that were in the period.
And I appreciate that, but
but that makes
Lucas, please jump in and tell me the period of significance went back and forth a few times, and we decided on 1976 because it was when the company ceased to be.
Yep, 1976 is when Northrop King was sold to Sandoz, and that was no longer the headquarters for Northrop King anymore. It was just a division.
Okay, that makes total sense. Thanks,
And
Nancy.
there really are not any additions from the 70s, actually. It's a pretty pristine building, more from the 20s and 30s. The only non-contributing alterations are some of the windows have been replaced.
Madam Chair, this is Frank White. Following on that same line of conversation, I think in the letter, didn't it talk about, wasn't the concern about the current owner and being able to maintain those? Is that really an issue for us to be considering? That might be a concern, but does that have anything to do with voting on accepting this on the National Register?
Jenny, you want to jump in on that?
Frank, you're correct. The ability of the owner to maintain the building is not the concern of the board. The board's concern is whether or not the property, the nomination supports significance and integrity and therefore eligibility to listing in the National Register.
Any other comments or questions?
This is Board Member Rob Mann.
Yes, Board Member Mann.
I just had a question regarding the excavations for the drainage project and whether or not there were any concerns about NHPA Section 106 involvement in those excavations, or the possibility that there are other buried, potentially buried archaeological features associated with the structure.
The project is going through the tax credit. It is going through the tax credit program, and therefore the historic architect in our office are reviewing it. David Mather, if he's still here, I would be curious to know what his role or what any archaeological role there might be. We did not identify historic archaeology as part of the nomination, simply don't have that area of expertise, and it didn't come up, quite frankly. So, David, do you have anything to say about that?
I haven't seen this project yet through the tax credit program, but I can certainly check with the tax credit reviewers. Generally, they reach out if they identify a potential archaeological issue, and it may not have occurred to them for this one. I don't know.
Okay, thank you. I was just wondering about that. And if possible, I mean, I think a possible solution, if the excavations are still ongoing, maybe even just having someone monitor those excavations could be of use.
Yeah, good point, definitely.
Thanks, Rob. Are there comments or questions before we vote?
Board Member Koski has his hand up. Board Member Koski.
Philip Koski, did we answer your question before?
Yes, you did.
Okay. Excellent. Thanks for persisting to get it answered. Pam, did you have a comment or question? Okay. All right. So, as usual, I'll start with you for the vote. We're going to vote now on this nomination. We'll start with Pam. There's been a motion. Yep. Moved and seconded.
Okay. Aye.
Thank you, John Decker.
Aye.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Aye.
Aye.
Andrea,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
you, Chris,
Aye.
Kate,
Aye.
John Stark,
Aye.
Mary,
Aye.
and Frank.
Aye.
And I also vote yes. So thanks, everyone. Thank you, Ginny, for this one and the others that preceded it. That's a long run.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Now we return to Dennis Gardner for the Roselawn Chapel and Administration Building in
Chair Anderson, this is Board Member Koski.
Yes.
I need to recuse myself from the discussion and voting on this property. My firm is under contract with the client, Roselawn, for architectural services.
Thank you for that reminder.
And so since this is the last item, I'm going to be leaving you.
Thanks for coming.
All right, thank you.
Next
Good night,
time.
everybody.
This is Dennis and John Disher. Were you going to pass off Jenny's presentation to me?
Yes, please take power from me.
All right, Dennis, it's coming your way now.
Okay, thank you.
Let me know if it comes through this time. All right, Dennis, you should have the that share button down at the bottom again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm looking at it, but I don't actually see the PowerPoint.
Okay, I'll share mine again.
Okay, if you could just advance them for me.
Absolutely.
Okay, I see it, John. Okay, this is the Roselawn Chapel and Administration Building. It's in Roseville, Ramsey County. The author is Emily Gansel of Gansel Works. Okay, John. The Roselawn Chapel and Administration Building were completed in 1904 and represent the design concept of an English village, reflecting Gothic and Elizabethan styles brought together as a distinguishable entity. And what we're seeing here is a view of the complex with the Administration Building to the left and the chapel to the right. Our camera is facing to the north. Okay, John. The Roselawn Chapel and Administration Building are located adjacent Larpenteur Avenue in the city of Roseville, just north of St. Paul. Prior to its incorporation in 1948, Roseville was a part of Rose Township, which was primarily known for its dairy and pig farms, and for the produce it provided to both St. Paul and Minneapolis. And here we can see, we're just looking at an overhead view of the complex, and you can see it's kind of kind of in the center there. Go ahead, John. And here's just a closer view, closer overhead view showing the boundaries of the property. Okay, John. The buildings are composed of buff-colored, rough-faced Indiana limestone and red tile roofs. The sharply contrasting color scheme adds to the overall aesthetic. Although the buildings are not identical, they were designed to complement each other. Both are L-shaped and feature steeply pitched roofs. The entrance porches for both buildings also have steeply pitched roofs, and entry into each building is through a Gothic arch. There are some notable differences between the buildings. Whereas the chapel has Gothic arched window openings in the Administration Building are rectangular. Additionally, the Administration Building has projecting bays on its north and south elevations. The chapel does not. The chapel is a square bell tower with a pyramidal roof with copper finial adjacent its north wall. This connects with a low rectangular section that once housed the catacombs, but has since been converted into a gathering space. Just to the north of the main section of the administration building is a rectangular garage that was originally the carriage shed. The entire ensemble is meant to reflect the concept of the English village, as noted from a pamphlet from the grand opening, and I quote here, "The entire group of buildings and gateways is of the English village type of architecture, the chapel with its low square tower being of the pure early Gothic." While the administration building is influenced by the Elizabethan and Jacobean periods of design. At the top left is the west facade and south elevation of the chapel, and our camera there is facing northeast. And the bottom right is the east facade and south elevation of the administration building. The camera there is facing to the northwest. Okay, John. Here we see the east elevation of the chapel with porte cochere. Camera is facing to the northwest. The porte cochere is in fact non-contributing, but the cemetery blended its design well with the older component. Okay, John. Roselawn was designed by noted architect Thomas G. Holyoake in consultation with Cass Gilbert. Holyoake was also responsible for the design of Unity Church and Trinity Methodist Church, both in St. Paul. He designed a number of residences in St. Paul as well. In 1916, he became part of the architectural firm Holyoake, Gimney, and Davis. His last commission appears to have been the Gothic-style chapel for Oakland Cemetery in 1924. He passed away the following year. And here we're looking at the catacombs at left with the bell tower and chapel. The camera is facing southeast. The catacombs were converted to a meeting space in 1992. Okay, John. Here we have additional details. The upper image shows a section of the entrance gate. Our camera is facing west. Windows are depicted in the lower two images. The photos at left of our camera is, the photo at left, our camera is facing northeast, and the photo at right, the view is to the south. Okay, John. The upper image depicts the face of the administration building with its wheelchair accessible ramp. We are looking west. The two images at the center highlight the details on the verge boards of both the administration building and chapel. At left, the administration building has a verge board of acorns, oak leaves, and nymphs. The details on the chapel verge board at right feature grapes, grape leaves, and a cherub's face. The bottom image highlights the projecting bay with decorative windows of the administration building. Okay, John. Here are interior views. At upper left is a view of the administration building reception room. The camera's facing west. At center is a view looking into the chapel from the bell tower. Our camera there is facing to the south. And at bottom right is inside the chapel, and we're looking northeast. Okay, John. Additional interior views. We see a decorative window at upper left. The view is to the north. The walk-in safe is in the upper center. View to the southwest. At upper right is the hallway between the office area and the former wagon and tool room. Our view there is to the north. The break room is shown below with the camera facing south. Go ahead, John. Here we have some historic images as well as a couple of present day views. At upper left is a view inside the chapel, and at lower left is a view from the bell tower into the chapel. Both views date to the completion of the chapel in 1904. The two images at upper right depict similar views through the vestibule. The image to the left is a present day view, while the image at right dates to 1904. Original wrought iron gates still remain. The middle photo shows the former catacomb space as it appears today. while the bottom image depicts the catacombs in 1904. Go ahead, John. More exterior images, although what I actually wish to show here is the non-contributing garage just northwest of the administration building. It is the building at the very bottom. The view is to the northwest. Although it is non-contributing, the cemetery went to some length to make it compatible with its surroundings, with buff-colored brick walls and a roof of similar coloring to the chapel and the administration building. Go ahead, John. Our period of significance is 1904. The level of significance is local. The National Register criterion is C, and the area of significance is architecture. But we also had to address criteria consideration A on this particular nomination. The period of significance is the year the chapel and administration building were completed. Additionally, it was necessary for us to address criteria consideration A, which applies to religious properties. The property meets criteria consideration A because it is not being nominated for religious purposes. Instead, it is being nominated for its architecture. And go ahead, John. Designed by noted architect Thomas G. Holyoke in consultation with Cass Gilbert, the Roselawn Chapel and Administration Building represents a distinctive example of Gothic and Elizabethan architecture, reflecting the, quote, English village concept. As such, the properties are eligible for listing in the National Register under architecture. And we do not have any correspondence with this.
Thank you, Dennis. Is there anyone in the audience, any visitors who are interested in saying something about the property?
Yes, Scott Spave.
Scott, go ahead.
Yes.
We can.
Thank you very much. Scott Spave, I'm the current president of Roselawn Cemetery. And I wish to thank the SHPO board for this nomination and opportunity to be placed on the National Register. We take great pride with these buildings as they were designed, as stated previously, Holyoke with consultation with Cass Gilbert. Our plan for the next couple of years is to complete restoration of all roofing, stonework of walls and foundation. Additionally, we're looking at all mechanical works and are to be improved to support modern indoor environments. And once again, I wish to thank you on behalf of the Roselawn board for this nomination. And thank Emily very much for her work in the details of this nomination. Very much. Very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments from the audience? And from the board, anyone?
Pam, and I would like to make a motion to accept this nomination.
Thank you. Pam makes a motion. Do we have a second?
Second, this is Kate.
Thank you, Kate. And questions or discussions? Emily also says, by the way, she's happy to answer the questions. Lindsay has a question. Is it unique that it was a non-denominational cemetery, especially at the time it was built? Anyone want to feel that?
Emily, did you wish to address that?
Yeah, I don't think I didn't know of other ones that were non-denominational. There certainly have been some since, I think, including the one at the end of Holyoke's life, the other cemetery one. But at the time it was built, there were a few other cemeteries close by, and they were all denominational.
I think Wood from a generation before is a non-denominational association-based cemetery. And I think Pine Woods is also
that's true.
Hi, this is board member Stark here. I'll I have a long history with cemeteries. My dad had been on a cemetery board for 45 years, and I'm currently on a board so, of a columbarium. But I want to commend the cemetery for wanting to put this on the National Register and for doing the work. And initially, they did a beautiful job. I know the difficulty of financing and doing something like this and keeping it going. It comes from perpetual funds mostly. So it's difficult to find the cash to do this. I think putting it on the register is really going to help them to maintain this a long time into the future. So good job.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Lindsay wonders here, what is in the trap door, which is not accessible during the visit? Just curious.
I think Scott could probably answer that question best. It goes into the basement, but I think Scott could probably explain it better.
Okay, the trap door at the entrance of the into the chapel from the east. Is that the question?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, that's a trap door that obviously can be raised for access into the basement below the chapel itself. The full basement of the chapel. That's the access point.
Okay, anything else?
I hope that answers the question. There's nothing more really to add.
Okay. Trust me, they'd keep asking if they still wondered.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Are we ready to vote? All right, since no one objects, we'll go for it. Caleb, you're up. Vote yes or no?
Is it me?
Yep.
Hi.
All right, John Decker.
Aye.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Hi.
Philip.
Recused himself.
Right, John. Yeah. Wait all night for that. Yep. Andrea.
Yes.
Thank you, Rob.
Aye.
Steve.
Aye.
Chris.
Yes, yes.
Okay, Kate. Are you there? Well, we'll go to Jim Stark.
Aye.
Mary.
Aye.
Frank.
Aye.
Circle back to Kate. See to hear her. I can't see anybody right now. All right, and I vote yes. So thank you for that. We're done with it. And Dennis, Amy, anything else that we need to do this evening?
Just want to say excellent job, Kristen.
Because I can't see anybody. Hey, thanks, Dennis.
And the state, the system, it's lousy.
John, did you make note of that for us?
This is Amy Spong, and yeah, thank you everyone. As we mentioned earlier, this is a new platform for us. We did host our conference this way. We held 6 webinars and they were quite successful and very well attended. This is just a little bit different format. I've definitely taken some notes. I think there's some ways that we can improve this format. And we will, we have a little bit of a break now, but just to point out that we did move our first meeting in 2021 up.
Jenny, I forget it. Is it moved from April to March or March to February?
It's February 16th.
Thank you. Yes, it's March to
Yeah.
February.
So that's a little bit different. So be sure to get that on your calendars because that schedule did change a little bit, just given our sunset date that we are up against for our tax credit, state tax credit program. So thanks everyone. And hopefully we'll see you in the new year, but hopefully maybe before that too. We'll be in touch.
Good. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, Schulke.
Okay. That's it then. Thanks, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Night.
Thanks, Jenny.